The superhero genre is dead. Not dying, not struggling, dead. And the generation that killed it, they're watching anime, and the people who replaced it, they were never trying to compete. They were just a bunch of Japanese artists drawing broken kids with swords. And somehow that won. I want you to sit with that for a second, because by the end of this video, I'm going to show you exactly why that happened. And I think the answer is going to change how you look at both. But 5 years after Endgame, Marvel's worst Phase 4 and films have scored as low as 46% on Rotten Tomatoes, numbers that would have been unthinkable during the Infinity Saga. DC rebooted. Again, the superhero genre, the most dominant force in cinema for 15 years, is bleeding out in public, and the same generation that turned Endgame into the film that briefly became the highest grossing movie ever made, they're watching anime, not because anime is trendy, not because TikTok told them to. And today, we're going to find out exactly why. Okay, so here's the thing, and I want you to really hear this argument because I think people get this wrong all the time. The superhero genre didn't die from bad writing, it died from a philosophy. The philosophy that a hero must always win, must always survive, must always come back, that no loss is permanent, that no wound is fatal, that the universe will bend itself to make sure the good guy gets up. And look, I get why that felt good for a while, I genuinely do. But here's the problem with that philosophy. The moment you guarantee survival, you kill stakes. No stakes means no fear means no love, and you cannot love a character you cannot lose. Anime understood this from the beginning. The world just figured it out. Now, before you come at me in the comments, I'm not saying superheroes were always bad, that's not the argument. To understand why superheroes collapsed, you have to understand why they were built in the first place. Superman was created in 1938, Batman in 1939, Captain America in 1941, literally designed to punch Hitler on the cover of a comic book. These characters were born in a world at war, a world that needed to believe in something unbreakable. The formula made complete sense then. Secret identity, moral code, villain defeated, city saved, see you next issue. But here's what nobody stopped to ask. What happens when the world that needed that formula no longer exists? Because the formula survived. The comics evolved into films. The films became the MCU. The MCU became a 15-year machine, and that post-war unbreakable hero philosophy came with it, untouched, unquestioned, applied to a completely different generation. I think that right there is where it all started to crack. Let's get specific, because I don't want this to be a vague Marvel bad argument. That's lazy. There are some precise ways the superhero genre killed its own stakes, and you can point to exact moments. 1. Death means nothing. Iron Man dies in Endgame. Gut-wrenching. Perfect. And then, in the same film, half of all life in the universe comes back. Every hero who died in Infinity War. Billions of people. Literally unerased. You spent years teaching your audience that death is a timeout, a brief inconvenience with a guaranteed reversal built into the next film, and then you expect them to cry when Tony Stark goes. You can't condition people to not feel death and then ask them to feel it. That's not storytelling. That's manipulation that stopped working. The stakes are structurally fake. I want you to try something. Pick any MCU film from Phase 2 onwards and predict the ending before the second act. Hero faces overwhelming threat. Hero struggles. Hero finds second wind. Universe is saved. Credits roll. See you in the next one. And look, I'm not saying that's always a bad structure, but when it's every single film, every single time, without exception, audiences are pattern matching experts. The moment they know how a story ends, they stop feeling it. Characters stopped growing at a real cost. This one I think is the most underrated argument. Thor in Phase 1, Thor in Phase 4. On paper, he has lost everything. His hammer, his father, his home, his brother, his people. That is technically the most devastated character in the entire MCU. And then Love and Thunder comes out, and he's doing slapstick comedy, dancing, playing the crowd. 4 films of compounding loss, and the writers decided the answer was jokes, because the formula cannot sit inside grief for too long. Grief doesn't sell the next film, so it gets resolved, gets softened, gets turned into a bit. And the audience felt that betrayal even if they couldn't name it. Superheroes are allowed to be hurt, they are never allowed to be changed. Okay? So now let's talk about what anime was doing during this exact same period. And I want to be clear here, anime wasn't trying to beat superheroes. It wasn't even aware of the competition. It was just operating on a completely different philosophy about what a story is supposed to do to you. Luffy watches Ace die, and I want you to really think about how Oda wrote this, because it's not off screen, it's not implied. Luffy is there holding him, screaming, and Ace does not come back. Not in the next arc, not in a flashback where it turns out he survived. Not ever. That loss is permanent, and you can track it in Luffy for every arc that follows. There's a heaviness in him that simply was not there before. Oda didn't let him recover, he let him rebuild, and rebuilding in one piece costs more than the loss did. Yuji Itadori, Jujutsu Kaisen. Itadori's entire existence is built around loss he cannot reverse. Every person he fails to save stays dead. Every cursed spirit he absorbs leaves something in him that doesn't fade. And I think the central question of JJK isn't whether Itadori will win. It's whether a person can stay human when the world keeps proving that being human isn't enough. Marvel never asked that question. It was too dangerous for the formula. And then there's Eren, who started as the most conventional anime protagonist you could imagine. Angry, determined, righteous. And then the pain didn't stop. It compounded. Season after season, loss after loss, revelation after revelation, until the hero became something the audience had to confront, not root for. Confront. And here's my argument. Marvel would never do that. Their entire business model depends on you liking the hero enough to buy the next ticket. Anime doesn't have that problem. Anime will let you watch your favorite character become the villain if that's what the story demands. And I think that freedom, that's exactly what a generation starved of real stakes was looking for. Same genre, superpowered protagonists, completely opposite philosophy on what a hero is allowed to suffer. Okay, but here's the question I don't think anyone in this conversation is actually asking, and I want you to really sit with this one. Why did we need heroes to be unbreakable in the first place? Think about the timeline. The MCU launched in 2008, 1 year after the global financial crisis, a world that had just been told, in the most brutal way possible, that the systems protecting them could fail, and did fail. Of course they needed Iron Man, of course they needed Captain America, of course they needed someone who would always get up. That wasn't escapism, that was survival. But the generation watching anime right now, they didn't grow up waiting for someone to fix it. They grew up knowing nobody was coming. Climate crisis, mental health epidemic, economic collapse before they turned 20, social media telling them simultaneously that they are everything and that they are not enough. They don't want a hero who wins, they want a hero who keeps going even when they're losing. And I think genuinely that's the whole thing. That's the entire shift explained in one sentence. Luffy getting up after Marineford, Itadori choosing to live when every reason to has been taken from him, Eren moving forward with the full weight of what he's become. Anime didn't beat superheroes, it just told the truth about what the world actually looks like, and a generation raised in that world recognized it immediately. So here's where I land on this. Marvel didn't lose to anime. Marvel lost to time. The formula that built the most successful film franchise in history was designed for a specific world, a specific fear, a specific need. And when that world changed, when the fear changed, the formula didn't. There's too much money inside it, too many sequels already announced, too many contracts already signed. Anime was never trying to compete. It was just telling different stories. Stories where pain is permanent, where growth costs something real, where the protagonist is allowed to break, and the breaking is the point, not the obstacle. And when a generation that grew up in a breaking world went looking for stories that felt honest, they found anime waiting, not because it's better, because it's true. But here's where I want to be fair, because I think something is coming that might actually matter. Doctor Doom. And I don't mean the Doom we've seen before, the forgettable versions, the watered down adaptations. I mean what Doom actually is in the comics. A man who is simultaneously the hero of his own story and the villain of everyone else's. A man with no secret identity crisis, no redemption arc waiting to happen, no wound he's trying to heal. Doom doesn't want to save the world. He wants to rule it, and genuinely believes that's the right thing to do. That is not a superhero philosophy. That is an anime villain philosophy. That's Pain from Naruto. That's early Eren. A character so convinced of their own correctness that the audience has to sit with the uncomfortable question of whether they're actually wrong. If Marvel commits to that version of Doom, not the safe version, not the one who gets redeemed by the third act, Doomsday could be the first MCU film since Endgame that actually has something at stake. But that's the question, isn't it? Can they commit? Can a franchise built on guaranteed survival actually let its biggest new character be irredeemably complex? Anime would. Anime already has. Go back to Endgame, that portal scene. I want you to think about why it hit so hard. Like, really think about it. It wasn't the CGI, it wasn't just the music. It hit because for one moment, after 22 films of guaranteed survival, you actually believed Tony Stark might not make it. For 30 seconds the formula broke, and you felt everything, and then he snapped his fingers and the crowd went insane, because they'd been starved of the feeling that something real was at stake. That scene worked because Marvel accidentally, just for a moment, made an anime moment. Permanent consequence, real cost, a hero choosing to lose so that something could be saved. Marvel felt it, the audience felt it, and then the credits rolled and the next film was announced and everyone went back to the formula and the audience didn't. So I'll leave you with this, and I think this is the real question, the one that matters going forward. Can superheroes survive becoming human? Can a genre that built its entire identity on invincibility learn to let its heroes break and actually mean it? Anime already answered that question. It answered it 30 years ago.